when you're spending marketing dollars, you want to understand where they're being allocated. Is it on new patients or driving existing patients? And obviously, if you're spending your ad spend on existing patients, that's a big red flag. And again, it leads to the underlying definition of why you need call tracking and why it's very, very important to understand your data and your analytics. Within Jarvis, I mean, we do have some marketing modules, and those actually do show patient concentration in terms of heat maps, the top 10 patients by zip code, their top 10 insurance providers. And we've seen clients definitely use that to aid geofence and tighten their campaigns, but also understand very well what to target. Like, for example, let's say you have outstanding crowns, then it might be a really good idea to run a campaign specific to a crown treatment or a promo. And those can be actually both virtual and in office. So you can run, we have clients that have run Invisalign days. And it's something that starts online, of course, and you can claim a coupon or, for a visit, but it's something that they dedicate their entire office to that effort, 1 day a year, let's say. And last but not least, kind of like something that I alluded to earlier on, is that to be overly cautious with regards to your ad spend and where you should be investing and reinvesting your money. And that's one of the things I think we're going to cover here today, which is what happens post that initial call and what happens when that agency tells you, hey, I sent you 80 leads from Facebook, but yet on your end, it's a black box and you have no understanding of what happened out of those 80 leads.
Stephen, do you want to talk about what this looks like in Jarvis in terms of managing that inbound marketing?
Absolutely. So the CRM part is something that we built, again, from an inbound marketing standpoint, coming from pre-Jarvis days on the agency side. And we saw a very big need to be able to go somewhere, and Salesforce has built a several $100 billion business around a CRM. But what happens to that one office or those 2 to 5 offices, or even clients that we have, common clients like MB2 that have 300 plus offices, and what do they use to track and consolidate all the leads? So everything that comes from the website in the sense of a form submit, anything that comes from the call tracking, which is again tied to marketing campaigns, and the call tracking is something that we actually, the old adage of less is more actually does not apply to call tracking. If anything, we say to people to be extremely granular on your call tracking, because that's what actually gives you the insights and the visibility. So the Jarvis CRM module is something that allows you to consolidate your calls and your forms. You can see in aggregate, whether you're looking at one location or at multiple locations, all the forms and the emails and the calls being passed on. And you can actually, your front office or your regionals can use that as a CRM. So they can actually go in and manually update the leads and say, hey, the status is, I called back the patient and I called them on February 22nd at 6 p.m. and add some remarks. And those are date and time stamped. Why this is important? Because again, it's all about how do you engage with the patient. So a patient has taken the trouble out of their busy day and somehow either called or emailed. And what happens is that these things get lost. So if you have one centralized system where you can actually see that and gain visibility, you can see what's happening. I can tell you that, like, several years ago, we were working with a group that went as far as to integrate SMS notifications when a form submit would contain the word Invisalign. So this can be very customized, and it's something that you can use, again, for tracking purposes to understand the journey of the patient and what happens from the inbound marketing side all the way to the actual visit.
Stephen, talk to me a little bit about the Jarvis online scheduling aspect and how that works.
So that's definitely expanding on a little bit on what you just mentioned, which is essentially how do we drive up the conversion rate? How do we drive, if we have 500 calls, is it possible to get 500 patients in and not just like, the 67 you mentioned?
Right.
And I wanted to add on the previous slide you had, I mean, I know that Callbox has some, you can drill down and even understand from an individual operator standpoint, their performance. And that's something that we've seen too, that ties very well into the coaching aspect. Was somebody pleasant in how they're answering the calls? Were they courteous? Were they, did they offer the most obvious thing, right? To schedule the appointment. And certainly what we've seen now, especially, post-COVID world, is that there's this need for immediacy and there's this need to book 24/7 at your own terms. And a classic example this morning, I had to actually schedule an appointment with my doctor, and I had an appointment last Monday, but because of the snow get-on and my appointment was rescheduled, and it was so bad that they called me on Thursday and said, hey, we need you to call back because we're still closed to figure out a time. So this morning I had to call them, and I spent, I think, 18 minutes on the phone trying to get an appointment confirmed, which is like infuriating, especially when they're using, third-party apps that should support online scheduling. So that's exactly what we're solving here. Is we're solving this immediacy and convenience aspect, and it's something we've recently launched. I think in the last quarter. A lot of DSOs are actually using this because it allows you to offer a very easy way to book appointments online. So it's as simple as like click, confirm, and done. We shoot email or text notifications, and it comes with analytics, which is our favorite theme here, right? That gives you exactly the confirmation rate, the average lead time per appointment, which is important to understand how new versus existing patients are getting booked in, what the scheduled production is, what's the completed production, the average production per patient visit, and then something else that you touched on earlier on, which is how much money is still there as it pertains to kind of like an LTV, possibly a lifetime value. And you can see that that patients come in, and whether it's an emergency or a hygiene appointment, they'll get presented with some treatment plan. And that treatment plan is either scheduled or unscheduled. So in this particular example, you can see in that fictitious location, we have 159 appointments and close to $900,000 of unscheduled treatment. So being able to understand the appointment breakdowns and seeing who's existing versus new and who's children versus adults, and also understanding the insurance carrier breakdown, which gives you also great leverage when it comes to creating your marketing campaigns, because now Delta Dental, for example, is the #1 insurance here, followed by Cigna, right? So now you can create specific offers, specific campaigns to those membership plans.
Yeah, that's incredible. You mentioned, Stephen, that this is a relatively new piece for Jarvis, right? And I'm kind of throwing you a curveball. We haven't actually talked about this. So. But I'm curious on the adoption rate of an online scheduling system. We're hearing about it a ton from our clients, but I'm curious what your experience has been in terms of offices adding this feature in. Is it going?
All the offices are, I mean, it's actually one of our fastest growing products right now in the portfolio, besides the analytics, and most of our customers are actually layering it on top of Jarvis.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, a lot of interest, especially in the groups that have, again, different practice management systems. So let's say you are an Open Dental, you might have a native, scheduling solution, but what if you have Open Dental and Dentrix and Eaglesoft and Ascend or Cloud9?
Right.
And that's kind of like the solution here.
Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are tracking the leads in terms of the show versus no show, and how this page is set up.
And that's actually excellent. So the last piece to that kind of like black hole, because you get some kind of analytics and that 1,000 calls were made, 500 forms were sent. And then we're using UTM tracking to kind of like, dissect that and understand by channel and medium what's going on. But then what happens past that? And that's what traditionally in dentistry, there's been a huge gap. And we're probably the only, not probably, I mean, I know we are the only vendor that has solved this piece, which is basically the marketing attribution, which is fairly common in other verticals, but not that common in dentistry. Again, due to the disparate practice management systems and how complex it is to dig out that data and the analytics. So here, what we're actually doing is, remember I mentioned the CRM. So the CRM piece consolidates all of our leads. And then from there on a nightly basis, we take all that data, we sanitize it, which is a fancy word to say that we clean up, misspellings and, uppercase, lowercase, or phone numbers missing, and emails, mistyped. And then we actually compare that against the practice management system data. So we can actually tell you on a nightly basis, and we typically track patients for 60 days. So for those, from the time somebody submits a lead, and for 60 days after that, we track it on a nightly basis to see did they actually show up. And the 60 days is a little bit exaggerated, because I think most of the patients will actually come, from what we've seen, in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Sure. However, we do still track it for up to 60 days. And we find some amazing insights. We can tell you by channel, as you can see on the right-hand side, we can tell you exactly how many you get from Facebook, so, Google listings, Yelp, how many were redirects, Bing, whatever your advertising is, down to Yelp. and we can actually now tell you their first visit production. We can tell you their pending scheduled treatment. We can tell you the average visit. We can tell you the latency. How long does it take them to actually come in for new and existing patients? And we can almost give you an ROI if we plug in your ad spend numbers. So it's a truly revolutionary, and it's something that, like, big groups are certainly using. And it's something that I advise anybody actually to use that, whether you're spending $1,000 or $3,000 per month. You should have call tracking, and you should be using, again, I don't want to tout our own horn, but like Jarvis marketing Matchback, and actually getting a true insight into what's happening. I can tell you again anecdotally from clients that we've seen, like, you approach now big numbers like 100K, 200, 300K per month in a DSO, and you suddenly see massive inefficiencies that you won't notice in a smaller setting. So now you suddenly see that, like, 20, 30% of the ad spend is going to existing patients, which makes no sense. Why would you be spending money for existing patients? There are other channels and ways to bring people back for e-care. So that's kind of like what this does, and it pays in spades. The last piece has to do with like how we're taking the data, the conversion data, and allowing now a third party, like a marketing agency, to upload it back into Google or Facebook or Bing. And now we're giving dollar attribution versus just a conversion attribution. Because Facebook and Google only knows that an action was taken. So they only know that the call was made or a form was submitted. Beyond that, they don't know anything. Now we give them that missing piece, and we say that particular, click ID, which is again a unique tracking for a patient or a human, actually did have a first visit production of $2,000. And guess what happens when we upload that data? Now Google can optimize our campaigns and run it even better. So these are kind of like the two benefits of the marketing matchback: the insight and the optimization piece, which is continuous and priceless.